Hello and welcome to India Ideas, the weekly show which is all about science and tech, innovation and entrepreneurship. I'm Gautam Roy. The concept of waste to wealth has been around for decades. But is it practiced as much as it is talked about in India or even in other parts of the world? The opportunity is tremendous, worth nearly $2 trillion worldwide according to some reports. What are India's startups doing to leverage it? That's what we're showcasing today, close to Global Recycling Day on the 18th of March. Well, if waste management is a massive business opportunity worldwide, it's no less in India, which, according to government think tank Niti Aayog's report, produces over 62 million tons of solid waste every year with an average growth, that is annual growth rate of 4%. Plastic waste alone is projected to rise to 34 million tons per annum by 2031. India's waste management business was pegged at $12.9 billion in market size last year. It's expected to go up to $17.3 billion by 2029, growing at 7.5% CAGR from 2021 to 2026. There were 1,411 registered waste, sanitation and hygiene, that is wash category startups in the country in April last year. Now, what does that tell us about the future of waste management in India and the prospects of those who are rolling up their sleeves and getting their hands dirty to make wealth from waste? We're finding that out today with Abhishek Gashe, co-founder Elima, which actively powers a circular economy by offering seamless solutions for reuse, refurbishing and recycling. Maninder Singh is also with us, founder and CEO of CEF Group, which delivers reliable, clean, green and smart business models for the global waste processing sector and renewable energy projects. And we also have with us Vichendra, who's partner Inflection Point Ventures, which is one of India's largest and most active angel investment networks. IPV is a sector agnostic VC which is invested in various verticals and has raised over 650 crore rupees over 200 plus deals. Now, first, if I could come to you, Abhishek, thanks for joining us. Let me start with asking you, Elima really says that it's into urban mining and growing the adoption of circular economy in India. Now, what does this really mean and what does it entail in terms of both technology and effort? How does it generate wealth from waste or trash?
So firstly, thanks a lot, Gautam, for having me. It's great to be on a panel with Ivy and Maninder, the stalwarts of the industry. So first of all, I'd just like to take a minute here to understand what a circular economy really is, right? So when we talk about a circular economy, we are basically talking about transforming supply chains to closed loop supply chains, right? So what that means is keeping products and materials in use infinitely by using some technology or processing technology. And conventionally, we've been looking for these raw materials under the ground through mining. And circular economy or urban mining is basically can be used or mixed together to basically say that instead of mining for resources under the ground, we can look for these end-of-life products or packaging material or over-the-ground reserves to bring them back into the supply chain. And that is what we are currently focusing at Elima as well, where we are trying to understand how we can create the right infrastructure and technology across three key business practices, right? Which is firstly on the acquisition of these materials and products. So for any circular economy to survive and thrive, we need to acquire raw materials which are over the ground reserves. And we need to acquire them in large volumes at the right price point and at the right quality. So we are using digital technology here to help us streamline our purchase and sourcing of these raw materials, especially across plastics, electronics, and batteries, where we are able to get access to these materials at the right price points. And to do that, we are concentrating on building smart infrastructure, decentralized collection infrastructure to be able to collect these materials. In the second phase, we also need to invest heavily in processing of these raw materials, right? So it's not just about the collection, but it's also on how we are able to process these raw materials and products into high quality secondary products or raw materials, right, which we are able to then, in the third process, remarket to companies and manufacturing industries who are ready to buy these products from us.
Okay, sounds good. Maninder, according to the brief that I got, one of CEF Group's activities involves the removing of trash from Srinagar's Dal Lake and turning it into manure. Now, how's it going and what are the other environment-related verticals of your company?
Yeah, hi, very good evening. So
Evening.
at Dal, what we are able to do is that all the lake weed and lake lilies used to be generated there in quantities as high as 70,000 tons a year. And nothing was being done with it. It was emitting the greenhouse gases and also polluting the environment. What we did was we converted this lake weeds into high quality organic manure, which we are now supplying to the farmers who are using it in horticulture practices, in the production of apple mostly. And not only we are able to clean the Dal Lake because of this initiative, but we are also able to give high quality, low cost manure to the agriculture farmers of the state of Kashmir, of the UT of Jammu Kashmir. So that is what we've been able to do in Dal. See, as far as waste is concerned, there are so many types of waste. And particularly if we talk about the largest waste availability in India is the organic waste like agriculture residues and other organic waste and municipal solid waste. Even if we consider one of the waste like municipal solid waste, it varies every 50 kilometers, every geographical location, every weather changing scenario. So waste processing is a very local subject. And what we as an organization are doing is to integrate the right solution for the local subject to be able to make the most out of waste, convert it into wealth, and also protect the environment as far as possible.
Wonderful. Now, Ivy, as a venture capitalist, what is your take on the prospects of the waste to wealth startups in the country in terms of their investability?
Sure, great. I think really for us to take a step back to think that where does venture capital money really come in, right? It is if there is a problem that is large, needs solving, and I think solving at scale. There is absolutely no question, I think, in terms of the size of the problem. You talked about it right at the beginning, saying that this is a problem that people have been working at for decades. It's only, I think, grown with population increase, consumerism as a way of life. I think where we stand as VCs, and we've got a large number of startups coming in, is the question of the ability to solve it in a way that makes sense for consumers and in a way that is scalable at, touching the problem across. The reality is wealth waste as a problem, when you think about it, is the fact that it is a community issue, right? And therefore will require consumers, will require government participation and also private participation. So I think the combination of that has started, has picked up, but I think simply more in terms of the exciting areas today that we think about technology, maybe not yet got its place in the sun so far, but building out and definitely an area of criticality, I would say.
Right. And hopefully it will assume some sort of critical mass soon as well. Now, Abhishek, how do you evaluate the evolution of the waste to wealth sector in the country in general, and how do startups fit into that entire equation?
Right. So the waste to wealth sector or the circular economy sector, like I mentioned, right? So it's a very large opportunity. If you just look at e-waste, plastics, and batteries, that itself is poised to be a $20 billion opportunity by 2030. Like Ivy rightly mentioned, that these are localized problems and community problems. So where I see startups coming in is to understand and Indianize these solutions. We cannot just copy paste models from the West because the business models are completely different. And what startups bring to the table is thinking on from the first principles basis, where we are able to really go down to the bottom of the problem and think of how do we integrate technology in terms of digital and physical technology to help get access to these materials. And the main thing that startups bring to the table is the agility with which they can implement solutions, the first principles thinking, and the real scale that they can get to by focusing on core areas and core problems. So I see this to be a huge opportunity, and it's a big enough opportunity where multiple billion-dollar startups can be created, multiple large companies can be created in this sector. But the thinking has to be from a very Indian perspective and from a very first principles perspective here.
Sounds good. Now, Maninder, what about the pace of adoption in the country When you compare it with, say, the developed world or similarly placed developing nations, India's record on meeting the climate challenge has been impressive on the renewable energy and conservation fronts. But what about recycling and managing both solid and semi-solid waste?
Gautam, I am happy to say that as a nation, we in last couple of years, we have actually given the kind of recognition that the organic waste needed, much needed in our country. Now we can actually not call it waste and call it a commodity or raw material, because we are creating biofuels like the bio-CNG, CBG and all from the organic waste which are coming out from the farmlands and coming out from agro industries like sugar mills. But at the same time, the municipal solid waste that we have in huge quantities is still a challenge. And we are far too behind from developed nations in getting to the right solutions for that. We have started manufacturing, we have started constructing 3 municipal solid waste to biofuel plants in the country. And we understand that there are few initial plants that are being done right now. So going ahead in next 2 years, we expect that India as a nation will see a lot of value being created in municipal solid waste area, and we are able to realize its true potential as well.
Okay. Now, Avi, what could be the key differentiator for Indian waste to wealth startups? There are many solutions for different waste materials around the world, but sometimes they're prohibitively expensive and sometimes they just don't seem right for Indian conditions, something that we saw Abhishek mentioned as well. Now, Indian startups coming up with good, inexpensive solutions to quintessentially Indian trash woes, which could also have global use cases?
No, I think, both Abhishek and Maninder have talked about it, right? It's a question of we no longer, and this is across sectors, need to get technology or approaches from outside of India, right? Indian problems and therefore Indian solutions has to be the key, more so from a value proposition of we know, the value conscious Indian consumer that we have and our ability to make more from less, right? So I think it is critical. For example, in the IPV portfolio itself, we've got, for example, Ishitva, which is in sort of an enabler in the waste management system with their robotics that helps sort through, waste, right? Picking up certain specific and the ability to do that, because that's mixed waste, and how do you go through that? So I think it is critical. It is India specific, whether it is the solid waste that we're talking about, and therefore whether enablers that help in the entire process, because I talked about scalability earlier. It's not just a question of technology that converts and usability and or extracting usable components. It's also how we go about it, because that's where scale sometimes gets constricted.
Okay. Abhishek, the Indian government, since the start of the Clean India mission, that is Swachh Bharat mission, has taken several steps to encourage the waste to wealth ecosystem, including startups. Now, is it headed in the right direction, or could more be done at the policy and incentivization or even penalization level?
So interesting fact here, right? So I was actually based out of India in 2014-15, and one of the reasons why I moved back was the introduction of the solid waste management policy and the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan that our Honorable Prime Minister started in 2014-2015. And since then, the evolution of policy has been really swift. I think the Indian government and our nodal agencies like Central Pollution Control Board or the Ministry of Environment, they've really been proactive in terms of implementing good policy to ensure that the waste management sector or the circular economy sector really grows. And in the recent past, we've also seen that Niti Aayog has launched its own circular economy forum. There is a clear guideline from the government to companies and startups here to say that, look, all the material that is being generated within the country needs to be kept within the country. So the government has clearly come out with great policies, like you have your extended producer responsibilities. They've just updated the plastic waste management and e-waste management rules. Currently, however, what I feel one thing which is lacking in terms of policy is that the policy is more based on the penalization mode, or companies are looking at it more from a compliance level.
Yes.
And this is where private companies need to really step up and refine our output so that it doesn't become a penalization but an incentivization mode. And my true ambition now is that in the next 10 to 15 years, companies don't buy secondary raw materials or products because of compliance requirement, but just because that the quality of these raw materials and products is so good and at better price points that the industry should get off the crutches of policy and just thrive as a regular business.
Right. Now, Maninder, would you like to add to that? Because what I wanted to ask you also is that is India's industrial sector doing enough to convey to us all that it sees waste as a problem and making wealth out of it as an opportunity? Startups can provide innovative solutions, but is the industry taking it up in the manner that is required?
Yeah, Gautam. See, as far as the agro-industrial sector in India is concerned, they have actually understood that what they were considering waste till about a couple of years back has actually got good value, and now they are on the board dealing for their residues or waste with companies like ours and others to get the best value for themselves and making money out of it, which is a good thing to be, good situation to be in for them as well as us. But as far as the non-agro industrial industries are there, they have still not been able to realize the value of waste coming out from their manufacturing units, etc. Because they are still considering that as a compliance issue based out of the compulsions of NGT or pollution control boards, etc. But at the same time, they still are little distant from actually getting hold of their waste and making the right processes to make sure that they leverage it to get some commercial and sustainable targets and goals.
It's interesting that you said that the agro industry is doing better than the non-agro one, because what really springs to the mind is the problem that Delhi, NCR and a lot of other areas are also confronted every around the time of Diwali with the burning of the stubble. If if the agro industry had been doing what it can, potentially the problem
I would like
would disappear.
to interrupt you, Gautam, here. See, there's a contradiction that we always talk about this thing, and I like to address it properly. See, we talk about stubble burning as the main concern for making Delhi black in every October and November. But if I ask you a simple question, that stubble burning was more 20 years back or today, you'll definitely say it was more 20 years back.
It adds to the vehicular
But
and
on
other
the other
pollution.
side, is the pollution more today in Delhi or 20 years back? It is more today. So, see, it's not only stubble burning. There are a lot of issues in growing urban cities, like the construction waste, the debris, the particles which are in the air, which hold on to these pollutants. So, all this together form the kind of a bad experience for us during the winters, and that is what we have to deal with. Rest all is political blame game, and I think the actual people who are in the waste management industry, they understand the value of organic waste, and they're doing a lot to process it and get value out of it. So even if farmers sitting in UP and Punjab or Haryana, they also understand the value of this waste as much as we do, and they are also making the best of it in their own ways. So that's how it is poised.
Well, let's hope that we make rapid progress on that front. Now, Ivy, if there are two kinds of startups pitching to you from this particular sector, waste to wealth. One which says they'll ensure less trash is generated, and the other which says it will provide an effective and scalable recycling solution for trash. Now, which parameters would you use to evaluate them for making an investment, and why would you choose one over the other, if you do?
Sure. That's putting me in a spot, but I think in a perfect world would like to say number one, right? I sort of take care of the root cause. I don't generate, and therefore I don't even have to create the problem, right? I really address it at the causation, I would say. But the reality is we are 6 billion plus and growing. Consumerism and lots of, in general, aspirations, lifestyle, consumption, etc. And therefore, I think to me, the real problem solver, at least at this point in time, would be to address the problem at hand. From an evaluation perspective, I referred to it a little earlier in the call as well, that I think it's a question of scale. And when we say scale, maybe not in the same like of a technology company that scales rapidly, but scale that is able to change consumer habits, that is able to engage with, let's say, the government and semi-government organizations to bring about, because it will last only when it becomes a habit and then starts working through. But till we get to that stage, how do they incentivize it, right? In terms of same quality, similar costs, and looking at it from those parameters will be important.
Right. Abhishek, let me come to you again because the question becomes, why don't we have more and more tech coming up or innovation coming up where you address the problem at the source and don't let that kind of trash be generated in the first place. Then we wouldn't have to talk about recycling and circular economy and all that, because we would have addressed the problem at its source. Do you think that in the coming days we might see more innovations coming up on those fronts?
Look, I don't think so, because like Ivy said, right, we are 6 billion heading to 10 billion, growing middle class, aspirational middle class all around the world, right? And aspiration directly is correlated to consumption. So quality of life is also dependent on how well and what you consume. So in terms of reducing waste at source, I don't think it is going to be possible. What we are actually doing on a very mental scale is we are basically trying to transition the material. So we are saying, look, don't use plastics, use biomaterials, but waste is going to get created, right, in one form or the other, because there is an end point to consumption. So I believe that it has to happen in both the ways. But contradictory, if we say that circular economy does work, then waste generation by default gets eliminated, right? Because it comes back into continuous usage. So our focus should be more on creating circular systems, creating circular systems which are material agnostic. But I don't think waste generation will stop because consumption will keep on increasing.
Okay.
So we need to
Maninder, do you agree with that? Because the way I see it, to
I
progress
totally
to another
agree.
level, which is better, we need not just these changes, bringing in a system of circular economy, but a change in lifestyle and change in our value systems as well.
Yeah, see, I totally agree with what Ivy and Abhishek have just pointed out, because what we're talking about is a prevention versus cure theory. So no matter what, as this is a lot to do with the human psychology, and since thousands of years, it's gone on like this, that we are on 10% prevention and 90% cure. So cure is needed when the problem is there. And this problem, waste, is going to increase a lot, because our speed of actually treating it and working around is pretty slow as compared to the kind of waste we have, which is increasing at almost 4 to 6% every year. So it's a big challenge, and we have to do a lot as a nation with people like myself, Abhishek, Ivy, and many more to come together to get to the solutions.
Well, definitely. And Ivy, do you feel that these businesses then have a lot of room to grow, because we're not going to stop making trash anytime soon, and these will remain a very good value proposition for the VC segment in the years to come?
No, absolutely.
Yeah,
I think it's a real problem, needs to be solved, and I think lot is being done. The coming together of that and happening at scale is all what we look forward to, not just as VCs, but I think as sort of Earth beings living in this planet, look forward to that.
Oh yes, definitely. Well, thanks a lot for joining us, all of you, to talk about this issue today. It is a Global Recycling Day that is coming up, and on the 18th of March, and let's hope that we see more initiatives in the direction of cleaning up the earth, and of course making money through that process as well, because that's the best way to do things. If you have to address problems, find an opportunity in that problem, and then of course it becomes much more easier to solve. Thanks a lot for joining us and talking.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Bye-bye.
And that's all we have for the moment in this edition of India Ideas. Do keep joining us every week on Thursday at 8 p.m. IST and 2:30 p.m. GMT to find out more about India's vibrant and growing startup ecosystem. Thanks for watching.